Moving on.
All right, moving on.
Next topic. Why does it take so long to fix Destiny 2?
Why does it take so long, Jake?
I don't know, James. I was asking you the question.
I don't know. I'm not a developer.
So, after last night's blog post on the state of Destiny 2, which detailed improvements due over the next month and touched upon last week's weekend storm of XP controversy, Bungie has now published a podcast with further information on several hot button topics.
So when we say last night, we mean last week. It was Wednesday. The article obviously came out after this, but before we got here. So we talked about it a little bit last week on the podcast. They dropped stuff on Wednesday talking about game plan for the future and just like a brief, like 20,000 foot view of it. They talked about changes coming on the 5th, which is today or yesterday. We talked about changes coming on the 12th, and we talked about changes coming in the new year. So they went with very specific bullet points. They're like, here are all the things we're working on. Here's when they're coming out. Here's when we're going to talk about them next. And it was very well thought out, and I think very important to do. Did they hit everything? No, but they hit a lot of things. They answered a lot of complaints, and I think they set the bar in a good place going forward.
Yep.
The next day is when the podcast came out with the developers. Most importantly, Mark Noseworthy, who's amazing.
Project lead.
He's amazing. Love
it.
Good guy.
So we have some quotes here from Mark, and we may not hit them all, but just some good information. So, quote, what does it take to update the game? Something I've seen online is how is it you guys can fix this one thing but not this other element? Anytime a bug in the live game comes up, we have to evaluate it. There are 3 questions we ask. How severe is this thing? How quickly can we fix it? And when can we test and deploy it? Some things can be fixed really easily. Sometimes they are on the server side, like matchmaking things and the XP issue from last week. We can just change one number and that's it. Something like the host migration issue and the raid boss Callus fight doesn't work that way. It's on the client. Then even if it is just data, it's something like how much damage does this weapon do? It still requires a patch to the data on your Xbox.
Or PlayStation.
Whatever. If you like playing Destiny the right way. And just because it's easy to fix does not mean it's easy to deploy. One precise example is the bureaucratic walk. It was totally effing up PvP. Trials was about to come out, and you could just sit in a wall and shoot people. So severity is pretty high. A top tier activity is boned. How easy is it to fix? It's pretty easy. We think. Medium difficulty to fix. It's not hard to code, although we couldn't just pull the emote from the game as it's not server side. But even if we checked all these boxes, when do we deploy the thing? Well, it was a window in the development where we were just about ready to ship on PC. So we were trying to not change anything. When you're about to ship a game for millions of people, you want it to work. So we were entering into a blackout period for maybe a couple of weeks, maybe 7 to 10 days, where we didn't want to patch the game unless it was just tragic, just horrible.
Yep.
End quote.
Yeah. There's lots of quotes.
Several different.
Lots of stuff.
Some bits in the middle, but it wasn't.
Lots
didn't
of stuff
change the
to
narrative.
pull out in there. I think this is kind of the state we have in a game, MMO stylings, right? I want to go out and call it an MMO because I know it's not. I get it. It's not that much content in it compared to that. Whatever, fine. But in a game like this that's constantly online, that's constantly doing stuff, you're always interacting with people and stuff, there's a ton of factors that go into it. Now, does this explain why it's taken us 3 months to get quality of life changes that we're seeing this next week and beyond that? I don't know. I think the PC release delay impacted more than we thought. I think that when they sent that off for gold was a different time when the consoles go out for gold. And because of that, we're not able to make those changes. Because they're like, we could change it in consoles, but it's not going to be ready in PC for weeks. And then we're going to have a split in the player base, and we don't want that. So I think it's interesting. It's frustrating as the player because it's like, man, everyone got like 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 10 weeks in. You're like, okay, here's some changes that need to happen, and nothing happened. It's part of its patience, obviously. But he's right. Some things are easy, some things are hard. That's just how it is. Yeah. He can't just flip a switch and turn off a walk, right? It's stuff stored there. If you were doing everything on the server, everything would be really slow and you wouldn't be able to get anything done. So there's a reason that it's not like that.
Yeah. And I imagine with a staggered launch like that, like you said, you don't want to make the changes and then launch there's a patch that's going to be these things that you guys haven't experienced this problem yet. Maybe it's not a problem on PC. Maybe there were things on the PC that required more work that wasn't planned on, and it was just like, all right, we need to focus on getting this new one launched. This one still technically works.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's annoying, but we'll get to it. So we need to make this one actually work, and then we'll focus on this one.
Yeah.
So you got older child wanting a toy, and baby is screaming because it's dying.
Right.
Exactly like that, right? And that how parenting works?
100%. That's exactly how it is. So it is interesting. It's always good to get insight into these developers. Mark Noseworthy, if you really interested, go listen to the full podcast. He's a very passionate guy. He's very animated. He doesn't pull any punches, which I think is important. He's very similar to Luke Smith, except he doesn't talk like a child sometimes. he sounds like a very educated adult. And he's a good guy to get information from. The one thing confidence. We really didn't get a lot about in the podcast, which doesn't really surprise me. We got some of the details of what's happening with the XP, like what happened, what they're changing, that sort of thing. We didn't really talk about why it was there in the first place or why they felt they needed to make the change after they were called out on it. I think for the simple fact is because they were called out on it. Like they got caught with their pants down and didn't respond in the way they should. And it was, he mentions that it did look bad. Said in PR terms, you could classify this as breaking into jail, meaning that if we address it, we will get coverage and people will make headlines out of it. People will try and stoke the conversation, which may be antithetical to a business strategy. Haha. But it's probably valuable to talk about because in the absence of information, people will move themselves to believe we implemented the system to F them, to be SE, greedy jerks. If you want to go hear the unedited version, you can go do that yourself. You can't win for losing. I get that. But this should have been like a system. It's like, this is a very deliberate system. And I kind of agree with it. I don't think you should be going out there and farming the easiest thing in the game for 2 hours and getting a bunch of token for a bunch of gears. Is the token system crap? Yeah, It kind of is. And they're going to change that. Fine. But this was a way to kind of circumvent that. And it sucked and it's boring. It's kind of like a loot cave, except it sucked. So I get why they did that. And I actually kind of agree with it. I think if they were up front and been like, look, we want you to play these content. If you play these contents, then you'll get more XP. If you go do this, you're still welcome to do that. It's just going to take a little bit longer to get where you want to go. I think if they were just upfront and honest, either the first time someone brought it up or in one of the streams that we had, right? They always have streams leading up to reveals of stuff. Why not talk about the XP there? Be like, hey guys, we got this interesting thing with XP. This is what we're doing. If it doesn't work, we'll turn it off, but we want to see how you guys react to it.
Yeah.
And then go. I think people would have reacted a lot better to it.
Yeah, I agree. And it took listening to the show last week for me to like really understand how the system worked, because I didn't look that much into it, so it wasn't really affecting me that much. Therefore, it didn't bother me that much.
Exactly,
because I only played the content that they put in high XP for.
Yeah,
at the end of the day, because I only played however many hours a week. I just play on the weekends.
Yeah, we play
where they
trials.
have everything you want to do that gets you good, like a lot of XP.
Yeah, exactly. We go do some heroic events for flashpoints and stuff
how
like
the game is kind of designed to be played.
Right. I mean, that's how it is, and I think it's interesting. One of the things they mentioned in the State of Destiny blog that they put up, which would be really cool to be a regular thing where it's monthly or quarterly or whatever. But they talked about they had a line in there that said that they wanted the game to become a hobby that you keep coming back to for more, which is a lot what Destiny 1 was like. And the way that Destiny 2 is built, it's not really built for that. So it's good to see that they're learning. They admitted it kind of in the first part, back in like June or July when Luke Smith was talking about it. He said stuff along the lines of like, look, this is a game that we want you to play and be able to get your enjoyment out of, and then be able to, put down. And so now they're seeing that people want something different and they're adjusting to it. So, I don't know, when you read through some of the quality of life stuff they're doing, do you think like the attention that they've got on this moving forward, do you think that's a step in the right direction? Do you think it's too little? Maybe not enough?
I don't know. I think the XP thing is kind of they did get caught in a situation where they should have just told us.
Yeah.
But I kind of think turning it off was just the wrong decision.
Yeah.
Just leave it on, say like, yeah, this is how it's supposed to work. We're moving on. We'd rather focus on more important issues that you guys have been talking about. Just play these things if you want to get XP, and don't play these things if you want to get XP.
Yeah.
Like, play it the way we intended you to play it. We're going to make the changes you've been asking for. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
We really are.
Maybe readdress it later.
Yeah. Address it. Like if you find a better system, be like, hey, remember that XP thing from a couple months ago? This is what we've done to make it different.
Right.
And then this is exactly how it's going to work. Mm-hmm. Here's the XP you're going to earn from doing this. If you buy Pop-Tarts, here's what you're going to get for that.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think it's a little bit of making a mountain out of a molehill.
I gotcha. I mean, it was such an easy thing for people to latch on to.
in the slew of things people love to hate about Destiny 2.
Yeah. Yeah. It just became the trendy thing that week. So it's interesting. It comes from the standpoint of like, oh, you're misleading consumers and you're misguiding what we're doing and things like that. And you're governing the way that we should play the game, where it's like, we should be able to play the game however we want and get the same amount of enjoyment out of it for everybody.
Spoiler alert, guys. Every game is governed for you to play a certain way.
So it is interesting because I think maybe the assumption was like Destiny 1 was not weighted like that. Like, here's the experience you get. We're upfront about it. Like, this is what you get. But then there wasn't bright engrams attached to it. So I think that's part of the rub. It's like, well, are you guys pushing us to do this because you feel that way about experience, or because you just want us to buy bright engrams? Like, what's the draw for them to do this? And I don't think it was to push us to bright engrams, because if you've ever like really used bright engrams, like there's really no huge benefit to it. Like you can
get a cool emote.
Yeah, and if you don't get the cool emote from the engrams, you can buy it, but you still have to get silver dust, which only comes from breaking down the stuff that comes in. You can't just go buy silver dust to buy the stuff that comes in specifically. So it's a very specific economy, and I think it's okay. I think that's how microtransactions should be done. So I don't know. We'll see. It's Crisis, Curse of Osiris. It's kind of the same thing. Is out.
Hopefully it's not a crisis.
And so we know it's not a ton of content. It's a small DLC. That's how it is. It refreshes everything up. We'll get a new section in the raid, which we're excited to do. Some story missions, some strikes, new Nightfall. It'll be fun. We'll do it. We'll spend a couple weeks in it. Quality of life. We got the Dawning coming around. They always have that right around the New Year time as a normal event they do. So it'll be interesting to see what they do with the small free content that they did, like with Rise of Iron and stuff like that, when they had little events here every once in a while. We'll see.
I don't think they're bring back Sparrow Racing.
I'm sure they will. It was a big hit. It was 2 tracks, and it got
2 tracks, and it was just hard to do.
It got a little boring, but it was definitely interesting. So I would love to see some of that return. And I'm sure it will. They've said it will. The emote wheel we've all dreamed and talked about. They're saying like January. So not December, but January. And they say you will be able to equip all of the exotic emotes at once if you want to. If you do not have the spicy ramen emote, unfortunately, it's gone. It was a season 1 only. So sad, but such is life. I will go on. I've seen it enough to know what it looks like.
Yeah.
And it wasn't my favorite out of all of them, if I'm being honest.
I do wonder how like the emote wheel affects the emote you see in Trials. Not that it's a huge deal. But right now, you can only equip the one emote. And when you're loading into Trials, you just see that one emote.
My guessing it'll just be like, hey, this is your Trials emote.
Yeah.
And
the one on the left is your Trials emote.
Yeah. So I'm guessing that's what it'll be. And you just put that in. But that'll be cool. There's some really cool stuff coming in. Like I said, they didn't address everything. We're not going to sit here and be Bungie apologists and say everything's perfect and wonderful. There's still question marks about some of the end game and making the activities more useful. They didn't go into a ton of detail about that. But they're adding a new weapon class, sort of, called a Master Key, or Masterworks class, which is basically like an add-on perk to a gun, randomly roll perk, whether it's reload speed or more mag or more accuracy or just something like that. So that's tomorrow. That comes with Curse of Osiris. Then there's some more stuff on the 12th. So should be fun. We'll know. We'll have patch notes tomorrow. Or we'll already have patch notes. Yeah. So if you are sitting here right now and you want to go read those patch notes, do it so you can see everything that's now in Destiny right now in version 1.1.
Nerds.
I love patch notes. Patch notes are like my favorite part of gaming. I'm a loser though. So
yeah, I'll read the big, like they put like the big, really like flashy stuff at the front of patch notes. Then like, here's the really detailed stuff. I'm like, whatever.
Yeah, James will tell me.
James will explain that stuff to me later on. That's what I got him for.
Because I'll always like literally like every time there's any kind of patch notes or updates or like trailer comes out, I'm like, hey, did you read the patch notes? Like, nah. Nope. Like, oh, well, let me describe them to you in great detail. And I finish up. He's like, okay. I'm like, all right, my input is so welcomed.
Auditory learner.
It's wonderful.
If I'm gonna read, I'm gonna forget.
Yep.
Moving on, guys. Star Wars Battlefront 2 is fixed, ish. Not really. Sorry about it. But they have boosted multiplayer rewards.
That's true. They did. They did. They had a blog post come out yesterday. Surprisingly enough, they've received negative feedback ever since they had loot crates with in-game advantages. Imagine that.
Who would have guessed?
So what did they do to fix it? They disabled the ability to purchase crates with real money. So now it's fixed.
Yeah.
Except it's
totally fixed.
Except it's not.
The biggest change increases the amount of credits earned that after multiplayer matches. YouTube channel Battlefront Updates did a quick test of the update and found that their reward following a match was slightly over 600 credits. Before the change, a competent player could expect roughly half that amount. Another change will allow players in the offline arcade mode to get up to 1,500 credits per day instead of 500. The mode initially drew criticism for severely limiting how much players could earn compared to those playing online. Like they're governing how you want to play. Yeah, whatever. The final change affects how many crafting parts are received through daily crates. Players receive a free loot crate each day that gives a small sum of credits and crafting parts used for upgrading their star cards. The original rewards were a measly 5 credits. But players, 5 credits? Shouldn't it be 5 parts? I don't know.
5 parts.
5 parts. Let's call it 5 parts.
Yeah.
But players on social media are now reporting an increase to 15 parts per crate. The grind isn't completely removed. Major upgrades for star cards take hundreds of crafting parts, but this change should help players get the abilities they want slightly faster.
Yeah, slightly.
Yep.
I mean, that's not a huge change. There's some interesting changes. It's good. You know, I mean, I kind of get, you know, at like reading more.
Good. It's a step in the right direction.
Yeah, I mean, I think reading more and thinking about it in terms of the arcade mode. It's an offline mode, and you don't want people to get an advantage by playing offline than going and buying star
don't put the
cards.
system in.
But then don't put that in there in the first place. That's at the end of the day, that's what just don't do that. Like,
what you do offline
don't have them in
shouldn't
loot
affect
crates.
what you do online.
Yeah, it's
like
just don't
every
have,
other online shooter
either don't
ever.
have loot crates with in-game advantages or don't put those in an offline mode at all. But you know, so they've continually altered Battlefront 2's economy and rewards. After a wave of negative criticism, they reduced how much the hero characters, they're like hero characters, but they're from Jericho. They reduced how much hero characters cost to unlock and temporarily disabled the loot crates to buy them with real money.
Temporarily.
These changes are another step towards a better experience, as the author says, even though I really just wish they'd fire the Death Star at the entire progression system.
Yeah.
And that's it in a nutshell. Like, at the end of the day, you can't...
It's too little too late.
You can't put lipstick on a dog. Like, it's still just a gross, nasty system that just doesn't work for, you know, gamers and stuff. Like, it's just not a productive way to do it.
Yeah. I don't know. At this point, they'd have to start all over with the progression system
Brand new
for
one.
anyone to be happy with it.
Yeah.
And that's just not going to happen. So the progression system we have is the progression system we're stuck with.
Yep. There'll be some tweaks. There'll be some things that change, and eventually the people that care will have all the cards, and then it'll be just down to skill again. But
so I'll be interested to see what sales number on Battlefront 2 is.
It wasn't great at Black Friday.
Curious, like, if it will still go down as like a success for EA.
I'm sure they'll still make money off of it.
I feel like the aftermath of what happened in Battlefront 2, like maybe Battlefront 2 sells gangbusters, and it does just fine. But the people in the know that are letting their friends know what's going on and be like, hey, you bought Battlefront 2, like, you know, not in a judgy way, like, hey, don't do that. But just like, hey, just so you know, this is what EA is doing. Yeah. And, you know.
Yeah, I mean,
just so you're aware.
I think it's going to mark a shift in game. We've talked about this before. We don't want to beat a dead horse, but it, you know, it marks a trend in gaming for where things are going to be going, where things have come from, and everyone's going to, you know, 5 years from now, we're going to be sitting and be like, wow, EA got away with doing all that. Wow. And so I think we'll see things differently looking back on kind of this gaming section of 2017 and how the industry reacted finally appropriately for the first time. It'll be interesting to see specifically how it goes down. But hopefully this will be last time we have to talk about Battlefront 2 for a while.
Gosh dang, I'm so tired of talking about Battlefront 2.
So tired of using the same image, but I can't find any good images because nobody's playing it.
Yeah, I know. I went to find an image for a thumbnail last week or whenever we talked about it. I was like, just
gonna face of Darth Vader and just throw it up there.
I'm just going to start looking at
with a lock
Star Wars movie screenshots and just start putting that on.
There you go.
Yeah,
wow.
Close enough.
Graphics are really realistic this time.
This is so lifelike. It's amazing.
Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed that segment. If you want to check us out even more by subscribing, make sure to click right up here. And if you want to check out more videos that we're doing, check out this playlist right here.